How's it going, Frosty friends, and welcome to the latest installment in our strategic development sessions, where it's all about the big range strats. So we'll be covering topics like meta strategy, about how you should move around the map and rotations, the prioritization you make when you're managing resources, when and why you want to take a certain fight and how you shape those, all those sorts of details. Today's topic in specific is going to be fighting early, about fighting early. So the short and the long of it is you are definitely going to want to fight early. That is absolutely something you want to do. However, you do not just blindly hot drop. There's a very coordinated process and reason for why you're going to want to be fighting early to begin with. So the reason why you want to fight early at all is because when you drop out of that dropship, in that moment, you have some information that you will never ever have again at any point in the game. And so we'll go over exactly what those pieces of information are. So the first thing is you're going to know where all the squads are landing, because everyone has to drop out of the dropship, especially in your immediate vicinity. You're going to know exactly where everyone is. The only other scenario where you're going to have equivalent information is where you're using the crypto beacon. So unless you use the crypto beacon in his little town takeover or whatever it is, then you will never ever again know exactly where all the other enemy squads are. So that's going to be the first thing. The next piece of information is you're going to know exactly the status of all the other squads. All the other squads, as soon as you drop out of the dropship, have they're full, like 3 full enemies, right? So you're never ever going to be in a situation where you're tempted to make the assumption that you're dealing with partial squads. You're always going to have to operate with the assumption that you're dealing with a full squad. That's another piece of information that you're going to have that you'll never have. The other thing is you're going to know exactly what's in everyone's backpack, which is nothing. It seems like a super trivial piece of information, but it's super important because it's actually going to directly inform the priorities of all of the squads. Because as soon as they drop out of the dropship, you know that every single squad is going to be looking for loot, which means that for at least like 1 minute, for decent squads that loot quickly, for at least 1 minute, they're just not going anywhere. They're going to be looting their location. They're not going to be jumping down your throat. They're not going to be attacking you because they need stuff, right? And so, except for in extreme circumstances, like where they're just super lucky with their RNG or whatever, you've got, a little bit of time where all those squads, after you saw where they landed on the dropship, you're going to know where they are because they can't move. Because they have to pick up stuff. Otherwise, they're going to be taking a losing fight. So with all those things considered, right? That's why you're going to want to take the risk of fighting early. So because every single time you fight, it's a risk. So, if you didn't have all those pieces of information, then it wouldn't make sense to take such a big risk early on when zeroing out, especially in the rank game mode, when zeroing out is so costly. But because you have all this information and because you guys are going to be clever about how you use it and make intelligent decisions based on it, then, then sort of flips things on its head. Knowing all of these pieces of information and knowing that everyone's got empty bags and that looting is going to be the first concern for everyone out on the map, then that means that looting for fast early on is super important. It is critical to your success with that first fight.
You're in their sight. There may be a shooter. Boy jumping.
The reason why is because whoever takes longer to loot, right, is going to be the squad that's going to be a known quantity. So whoever loots faster is the one that's actually going to be on the attacking side of things. You gonna dumb chase me? They're out here.
Hostile over there.
Saw him. Wait, why are they running to me? Why don't they just... Alright. So whoever moves first, right? Whoever starts moving after looting first is going to be the first squad to become an unknown quantity, from all the other squads' perspectives. So the longer you spend looting, the longer you're vulnerable. The longer you're giving your enemy squads time to plan out their ideal attack and start setting that up. Oh my god, can I climb, please? Maybe not. So so the first step, I guess, of being successful in your early fight is going to be looting quickly. Those are the reasons why. The next thing is going to be making sure that as you scout, or as you drop, that you're scouting out where all the enemy squads are, and so that you're not allowing the enemy squads to land around you without knowing exactly where everyone is. And so, like, you know, within, like, you know, the first, so it's like, let's say, like, you, like, landed, like, say, what's, like, a good example? Like, okay, let's say you landed Bunkertown, right? Then the places you need to know about are everywhere that's, like, one hop away from you, which is why, like, landing in the center of the map generally is not such a super great thing, because you have, like, a lot more space to patrol. Also, these guys are just, like, running around. They have no idea where to go. It's actually hilarious. I can just tell. So, like, you know, if you landed at airbase, right, you'd be watching Runoff, maybe here, Gauntlet, possibly the pit, and maybe like that, like the spaceship. And so, like, that's like why, like, I am such a huge proponent of, like, landing in the corners of the maps, because then you just have less places you need to keep track of, like, where enemy squads are to begin with. And then every single piece of, every single, like, spot you go beyond that is, like, sort of just bonus. But when it comes to, like, just dealing with, like, that first fight, having an idea of all the places that are adjacent to you is going to be critical. So when you're landing, ideally, you're going to be landing so that there's one squad adjacent to you, ideally. And so this is like the early fight that you're trying to set up, and you know, like other like ideal, I guess, or desirable situations, right? It'll be like when there's two squads contesting each other right next to you, like, but you're one location away. Like, what you would prefer not to have is to be directly contested on your landing. And so now that you, like, know sort of like where this, like, one enemy squad is landing near you, and that they're the ones that you're going to be targeting for your fight, then you start like watching for certain details to make a prediction about how that fight's going to go, and like what certain things you're going to be watching for. Oh, it's not gonna let me approach. So the first question that you need to know the answer to is who's looting faster. So whoever's looting faster is going to be the one that's going to be pressing the attack. And so, you know, if at any point you become aware that the enemy is looting faster than you for some reason, then that means you're going to need to start thinking about places that you're going to defend from, right? On the flip side, you know, if you guys know that you're looting faster, then you're going to be the ones that are going to be running the attack. And so then the positions you're going to be thinking about are attacking positions near the enemy's spot. So then the next thing that you're going to want to be tracking is, are my enemies aware of me? Because if they're not aware of you, then they're probably going to spread out. So in the first location, most squads have a tendency for all three members of the squad, as long as they're landing alone and they're not directly contested, to spread out for the sake of looting efficiently. And so if they are not aware of you, then they're going to be greedy, and they're not going to group up and prepare for a fight. And so if they're not aware of you and you're running the attack, then you're going to be looking to isolate one of them, right? You're gonna be, that's like, you know, your first priority is tracking down which of them is like nearest to you that you can isolate. And as soon as you isolate that first one, right, then the rest of that fight is like much simpler, because with one man down, like every single fight just looks really bad. Not gonna lie. And conversely, you know, if they aren't aware of where you are and they're running the attack and they looted faster, then what's going to happen is that they're going to be transitioning without posturing safely to defend themselves. And so, you know, if they're a good squad, they're going to be transitioning locations together as three, but they're not going to be pathing safely, right? Because they're not really focused on protecting themselves against you. They're just focused on trying to get to the next spot as quickly as they can. And if they're not as good, then they may have split up, and they might have, like, you know, one of their squad members like just sort of running around ahead of their squad, like alone, like sort of like I'm doing right now. The next thing you want to be tracking is, like, you know, do these people even like want the fight? Because if they're just like running away, then you're in a chase situation. You want to be careful when you're in chase situations, because the enemy has like all of the control in terms of like when they turn and when that fight takes place now. Assuming both squads are able to move at relatively equal speeds. Additionally, like, they're going to be looting like as quickly and efficiently as possible as they're running from you, and so they're going to be scooping up all of like the easy to grab loot. And so the longer you have to chase a squad for, the like greater their looting advantage is going to become. Yeah. So you're going to want to be careful in chase scenarios. The chase scenario is definitely one that, if it goes on for too long, actually leaves your squad at a disadvantage, as I was saying. The last piece of information you're going to want to keep track of is exactly where are the enemies and where are they trying to go. Because if the enemy is trying to occupy a power position, then you need to know about that so that you can set up a counterplay. And that's like a consideration you should be making, because that will inform sort of like what power positions you expect them to take up, and if you're on the attack, then what power positions you're going to take up as you make the attack. So, you know, use all of those like questions that I just described to sort of like build a prediction and a picture in your head of like what you expect to happen, and you know, like a flow chart that you're going to use during these fights. And then as you execute, you know, you're very aggressive, and you know, and you take your fight. You take advantage of all that information you have. So that's like, you'll have seen it like, you know, in the weekly video with like the drop strategy that I proposed for like, you know, coming out of map room, like how, you know, like those first few minutes, you know, in that guide are like very structured, right? Like the first fight itself is like very structured, like, because, you know, like I tell you, like, you know, it's like if you see the enemies, like if you're on the attack, you know, as the map room squad, and you see the enemies in like these locations, and these are probably the power positions that generally you're going to want to take up, and you're going to want to be picking up a, you know, like a mid-range option or a long-range option, you know, for the start of this fight, because you know that you're going to make that play, right? Because like, you know, like that's flow charted, like you can make predictions based on like where enemies are. Or, you know, if on the flip side, right, like you're the squad that's in repulsor and you're trying to deal with the map room squad, like, you know that you have to be faster because like you don't really have a power position you can take up, like in that sense, because the map room squad's like under no obligation to push you if you wind up being on top of the wall. And so it's like, yeah, and so it's like you should be able to construct that sort of flowchart and that sort of game plan for every single location if you're going to land. So it's like if you select a landing location, like ideally, like you should have like a plan with like that level of detail. All right, well that's it for today. If there are any questions, chat's always an option, as well as comments on YouTube, depending on wherever you're watching this from. Always open to feedback. Good luck, have fun. Don't feed.